You know, there have been a lot of bad trades in NBA history. A lot of bad trades. But typically, bad trades involve one team fleecing the other, like what the Celtics did to the Nets back in that horrible Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett trade. It is rare to have a trade that makes no sense for either team. I genuinely believe this is a lose-lose trade for Washington and Phoenix. First, let's go over the details of the trade. So Phoenix sends Chris Paul and Landry Shamet 4 second-round picks and multiple pick swaps to Washington, and they get back Bradley Beal. I'm going to break this down from both teams' perspectives. So let's start with the Suns. First, I hate losing Shamet if I'm the Suns. Good shooters are hard to find in the league. They are. Landry Shamet was making a very reasonable $11 million per year. He's shown he can play in big playoff games. He's the perfect spot-up shooter to punish opposing teams when they double Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. But okay, I mean, Landry Shamet is not irreplaceable. Phoenix did also trade Chris Paul, and that was definitely the correct move. You have to trade Chris Paul this year if you're Phoenix. Chris Paul is just too old. He's not nearly worth the $40 million that he's getting paid through his contract. His actual production values him probably closer to $15 million per year if we're being honest. My problem with this trade for the Suns, the reason why I think it is so dumb, is not because they traded away Chris Paul and Landry Shamet. It's not even because of the picks, like the 4 second-round picks and the multiple pick swaps. It's definitely not nothing, but I'm not even going to make a huge deal out of the picks. The reason this is so dumb is because this is not how you build a championship team. Bradley Beal is making $50 million a year for the next 4 years. I want to make it very clear. I've always been a big Bradley Beal fan. I covered him in Washington in 2016 and 2017. I've been to a lot of Wizards games, and more often than not, Beal was their best player. I think the guy's legit. And I think right now, he actually is worth that $50 million. I don't think he's overpaid like a lot of fans do. I mean, by the time his fourth year kicks in, he's probably going to be overpaid just because he's going to be old. But right now, I think Beal is actually worth $50 million on a team like the Miami Heat that could really use his offensive skill set. He is simply not worth $50 million to the Phoenix Suns. My friend Jacob, who goes by Rusty Buckets on YouTube, he tweeted jokingly when this report came out about Phoenix pursuing Bradley Beal that, oh yeah, everybody knows what the Suns need is more shot creation. And I replied, also jokingly, that I couldn't wait to see Bradley Beal average 17 points per game on the Suns. Except now this trade has actually gone through, and I'm no longer joking. Bradley Beal might just average 17 points per game on the Suns. I mean, Booker and KD are two of the top 5 scorers in the NBA. They are arguably the 2 best isolation scorers in the NBA, period. I just gave a glowing review of Bradley Beal. I like him more than most NBA fans. I'm objective. He's not better than KD or Booker. Of course, in a fantasy land, you would love to have Bradley Beal on your team as the most overqualified spot-up shooter of all time. But we don't live in fantasy land. The Phoenix Suns do not have unlimited cap space. They have a very limited cap space that is already taken up mostly by KD and Booker and Ayton's salaries. What the Suns should have done is they still should have gotten rid of CP3's contract, but they should have dumped him on a rebuilding team with cap space, attach some of those same second-round picks, as many as you need, to get one of those rebuilding teams to absorb CP3's contract for 1 year in exchange for some assets. Then you actually have a little bit of cap flexibility to sign some players. Like, the Suns now have had over a month to digest what has happened to them last season in the playoffs. Why did they lose to Denver? There's a lot of reasons. How about defense? What, is Bradley Beal going to bring that Tony Allen grind city culture to Phoenix? I don't think so. Okay. How about depth? In Game 5 and Game 6 against Denver, Booker and KD were visibly gassed, completely exhausted, because they played 40-plus minutes per night in the series. Why? Well, because their bench sucked. They didn't have any depth. There's been very little talk about this year's free agent class because it's not very sexy. There's not that many star players available, but there are plenty of great role players available. Just off the top of my head, some free agents that could be really good on the Suns. Bruce Brown, Grant Williams, Dante DiVincenzo. How How about this? Hey, if you really felt like you needed a third perimeter scorer, how about Jordan Clarkson? Clarkson coming off a great year in Utah. And you know Clarkson, he loves shooting those mid-range jumpers. He'd fit right into the Suns offense. You know what? Those four guys collectively probably cost less than $50 million a year. And doesn't that sound 10 times better than having Bradley Beal watch Booker and Kevin Durant dribble for 40 minutes a night? I just can't believe it. I'm also so upset for the Miami Heat because that's the team that really needed Bradley Beal and really could have done something special with him. You know what it is? This trade has Matt Ishbia's fingerprints all over it. Matt Ishbia, the new Suns owner. This dude is completely unhinged. At the time of the Kevin Durant trade, I thought it was a very risky move that can really only pay off if they manage to win a championship. Otherwise, if they don't win a championship in this window, it's a complete disaster because they mortgaged away their entire future to get KD. This is classic new owner syndrome. It's exactly what happened in the Celtics Nets trade. The Brooklyn Nets got a new owner. That owner wanted the team to be really good immediately, so just made the GM make insane trades, trading away their entire future to get players that simply don't fit for their team. It's just so stupid. It's like a kid playing NBA 2K at my GM mode, and then he goes, "Oh, I could trade for Bradley Beal on the Phoenix Suns. Wait, Bradley Beal is a 95 overall player. If I get him, I now have 3 players with 95 overalls. I am unbeatable." That's not how you build a basketball team in real life, dude. Come on. So listen, I'm ready to call it right now. This is only a few hours after the trade got reported. This is going to be a disaster because Beal's under contract for 4 more years. So is KD and Ayton. And Booker's going to get his new deal soon. He's not going anywhere. He's their best player. Good for Matt Ishbia. At least the dude is obviously rich enough to pay tens of millions in luxury tax. But more importantly, from a competitive standpoint, especially under this new CBA that's going to kick into effect next season, the Suns will have no flexibility moving forward. They could very well be at they call it the second tax apron. This is not a salary cap video, so I don't want to get too deep into the CBA stuff. But essentially, when you have such a high payroll on a new CBA, not only do you have to pay a lot in luxury tax, but you're also going to lose things like your mid-level taxpayer exception, which teams every year use to sign role players, because that's an exception that usually is around 7 to 10 million per year-ish. So that likely will be gone, which means the Suns are now completely at the mercy of ring-chasing veterans and two-way players that become good and rookie contracts to fill out their supposed championship roster. Good luck, Matt Ishbia. I hope you got your dopamine kick. Okay, now let's talk about the Wizards side of this. And this is a little bit harder to analyze because it's not exactly clear what the Wizards are trying to do. It's very clear what the Suns are trying to do, right? The Suns are trying to win a championship right now at all costs. For the Wizards, it's not exactly clear. They're obviously not in a position to win anything in the next few years, especially after they traded away Bradley Beal. And they have very big decisions coming up with Kyle Kuzma and Kristaps Porzingis. And depending on whether or not they let them go or re-sign them or maybe overpay them. But what we can say is this. If they're trading away Bradley Beal, they should be prioritizing assets and flexibility. In terms of flexibility, they did okay. Chris Paul and Landry Shamet are only on the books for another year after that. Their contracts are non-guaranteed. So next summer, the Wizards can just wipe their hands and be clean of those contracts. That's assuming they don't trade them beforehand. Very likely Chris Paul and Landry Shamet will both get traded. In Chris Paul's case, he might just get bought out in the summer and sign with someone else. The problem, though, is the assets. You traded away your franchise player, your supermax player, and you didn't even get a first-round pick. So it has been reported that there were 3 teams in the final seconds in contention to trade for Bradley Beal. It was Milwaukee, Miami, and Phoenix. We know what Phoenix offered. We don't know what Milwaukee offered, but reportedly it was not that good. Do know what Miami offered. Reportedly, Miami offered Duncan Robinson, Kyle Lowry, and 2 first-round picks. In what world are 4 second-round picks better than 2 first-round picks? And listen, those pick swaps that they also got from Phoenix, it is very likely those pick swaps will have 0 effect. Because the Suns owe so many of their future first-round picks to the Brooklyn Nets for that Kevin Durant trade, The Wizards only have the right to swap picks in 2024, 2026, and 2030. Now, 2024 and 2026, there is no way that Phoenix is going to be worse than Washington. 7 years down the line, who knows what's going to happen in 2030. So maybe that turns into something. But you see what I mean? It's possible the pick swaps become completely irrelevant. They should have taken that Miami deal. You always take the first round picks. Kyle Lowry comes off the books after next year, the same way that CP3 and Shamit do. I suppose the big hang up for the Wizards was Duncan Robinson's contract. Because Robinson is owed around 17 to 18 million a year for the next 3 years, not just the next year. So maybe the Wizards are trying to plan something for the 24-25 season when they want to just have that max flexibility. Perhaps they're eyeing some free agent that they think they can target, but when's the last time the Wizards got a high priority free agent star? Like, I don't know, Gilbert Arenas? It just hurts. You traded away your franchise guy and you cannot even get a first round pick. But you know what? The Wizards have nobody to blame but themselves. This whole thing, this whole debacle went downhill the moment they gave Bradley Beal a no trade clause. Bradley Beal, the only player in the NBA with a no trade clause. A few years ago, when Steph Curry got his Supermax extension, he requested a no trade clause in his deal, and the Warriors declined. They said no to Steph Curry, and the Wizards' cowardly front office gave Beal this no trade clause for no reason. This is franchise malpractice, because now the few teams that Beal gave the approval seal on to be traded to, they have immense leverage on the Wizards. Each one of those teams, instead of having to outbid the rest of the league, now only have to outbid 2 or 3 other teams. I mean, yeah, no wonder the Wizards got such a bad return on Bradley Beal. This is just business, right? It's just all about leverage, and they had none. I've always felt that for these middle-of-the-road teams, you've got to just stockpile draft assets, as many as possible. Try to get high draft picks, either by, winning the lottery or trading up for it in the draft with those draft assets that you compiled, and trying to hit that franchise guy, because you need that franchise guy, and they don't have it right now. I always root for DC, man. Like the Wizards, when the Wizards are good, their fans show up. The arena is actually popping. It's right in the middle of the city. It's next to Chinatown. It's a great vibe all around. They just have not been good for 4 decades. They haven't made the finals in 40 years. If only back in the day, the Washington Bullets could have drafted Ja Morant. Now that would be a dynasty.